So, modern communication and stress. I love sharing this slide because we do not realize what's coming at us all the time. 246 billion emails are sent and received every single day, and that was by the end of 2019. I think this will be very interesting at the end of this year to see what the stats are like now, because we are not working together in offices. Most of us are still working from home. So I expect that that would go up very much. The average worker receives 121 emails. They can send 40 and they can process approximately 50 per day. So what happens if we're receiving 121 and we can only really process 50 effectively? What happens to the shortfall and what does that do to your stress level? Now, most assistants I know can process a great deal more than that. So assistants are functioning in the top 6% of the working population when it comes to processing information and email. So that's also a nice thing to know, that your brain has adapted to the kind of career that you have, and you have some special abilities. So I don't ever want you to say, I'm just the assistant ever again. The McKinsey Global Institute found that an average employee spends 13 hours a week reading and responding to email. Isn't that insane? That's 28% of your working time, and it equates to 650 hours a year. I really wish people would send less emails, and when you are sending an email, do it in a brain-friendly way. Use bullet points, underline important information, change the color, highlight things, make it as easy for that person to consume the information as possible. So bear that in mind. There is a massive overload. And I think a lot of us feel like this by the end of the week. I can't keep track of all the instant messages. I can't keep track of the messages on LinkedIn. My WhatsApp is going crazy. I don't know what's going on in my mailbox. We all feel like this. But as an assistant, there are two things you need to know. You can take this pressure off your manager. And this is something I don't anticipate will ever go away. So there is space for us to make ourselves future-proof when it comes to managing information and processing of information. So how do we deal with stress and overwhelm? This sounds so simple, people, but breathing. Breathing slows down your body. Okay, so I sit down and I take a couple of deep breaths. It slows down the panting, the breathing that we do in the shots. If you can breathe a little bit deeper, your body suddenly says, oh, great, I'm not in danger anymore, because you're sending the right cue. The same thing happens when you put a pencil between your teeth and it looks like you're smiling. By doing that, your body says, hey, I'm smiling. So it suddenly releases happy hormones. So be aware that it works both ways. You can trick your brain by doing certain things with your body. And breathing is a very, very important one. When you start feeling panic, find a quiet space, take a couple of deep breaths. That resets you almost immediately. It doesn't solve your problem, but it puts you into a better mindset to deal with your problem. The next one is make a list. Now, I encourage you to make a paper list, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we are so overwhelmed with digital information and using of devices that the second you write down a list on paper, it feels completely different. Your brain also gets the message that, hey, look, I'm doing something about the problem. And immediately the cortisol and the adrenaline reduces. Move to a different location. Again, simple trick that tells your brain, look, I'm away from danger. I'm moving away from the danger. So you're tapping into the fight or flight. And in this case, your brain says, great, I'm away. So even something as simple as getting up, taking a pen and paper, going into a kitchen, making yourself a cup of coffee, while you wait for the kettle to boil, start to make a list and take a few deep breaths. This can be magic if you implement it. Find perspective. I'm sure you've all heard of the 5 by 5. If it won't matter, in 5 years' time, do not waste another 5 minutes on it. Easier said than done, I know, but sometimes we need to lift ourselves above the problem and look at it through somebody else's eyes. And sometimes when we do that, when we have that perspective, we say, okay, but my problem is actually not that bad. I mentioned that I work on the SIPO admin bursary project, and often I'm so humbled by what these kids are going through, and that gives me perspective for my life. I'm complaining about nitty-gritty things that don't matter. So find that perspective in whichever way you need to. Move your body. Remember we said endorphins. And as soon as you are exercising, you are also using up the adrenaline that's floating around in your body and the endorphins floating around, the cortisol floating around in your body. So it literally burns those chemicals. If you don't, you have a buildup of those chemicals. The other thing I never knew was that your adrenal gland can become depleted. So you then have 2 or 3 days where it feels like flu and you have to stay in bed because you can't do anything. Now, I've experienced this myself, and that is adrenal fatigue. We live in an environment where, I mean, when I was in corporate, I was sometimes working between 11 and 13 hours a day. No human being was designed to do that. The amount of stress I was under meant that I was using all this adrenaline was in my system all day, every day, to the point where my adrenal glands couldn't produce any more adrenaline. So be aware that that's something that can happen. Find a reset button. Now, I use the example of pouring a bubble bath because that's one of my favorite resets. And often it's not really pouring a bath to get clean, it's pouring a bath to wash the day off me. Find something that resets you. Find something small. It doesn't need to cost money. It can be as simple as walking your dog or singing to the radio. Whatever it is for you, find it and use it. Why sleep and rest really matters. Sleep resets your hormones. So you have a lot of like a sound systems equalizer. When your body is at rest, your body says, okay, this is too high, this is too low, but you have a natural reset. Your brain sorts through the memories and the events of the day and puts them into some kind of order. So this is why I will meet a lady with red lipstick, and then tonight I will dream about red umbrellas. It can be that random, okay, but that's your brain going through pictures and snapshots of the day and trying to make sense of them and trying to figure out what does this mean. So this is also very important. It reduces the impact of stress and anxiety. If you are well rested, your immune system is better and you are less susceptible. If you really think about it, if you are very, very tired and it's towards the end of a very long week, how stress resistant are you? Are you more anxious? Are you making more mistakes? This is the impact of lack of sleep. And we live in a society that glorifies lack of sleep. And I want to encourage you for your own mental well-being, but for your performance, to rest when you need to. It cements your wiring. So I often say, you know, when I'm learning something or trying to acquire new knowledge or working on a new presentation, often a quick nap helps me cement. And now I'm talking about 15 minutes max. That quick nap, number one, energizes me. Number two, cements that wiring. It enables your body to heal. Rest enhances your creativity and problem solving. I'm sure you didn't know that. Many people will say to you, I go to bed thinking about the problem and then I'll wake up with a solution. That's your brain actually working while you're asleep. It's not something that came to you in a flash. So be aware that you can actually tap into that potential. And it definitely helps you avoid burnout. If you are getting enough sleep, your body is more resistant to disease, number one. Number two, your hormones are better regulated. You are in a better zone. You are more resilient and able to deal with what's thrown at you today. If I haven't slept well, I'm already woken up on the wrong side of the bed. You spill coffee on yourself on your way to the office. You know, this stuff tends to snowball and it all comes back to fatigue. Fatigue and stress, it's like the chicken and the egg. Which one came first? The more stressed you are, the more fatigued you are, and vice versa. So make sure that you use rest and relaxation and sleep as a tool. It's not a luxury, it's a tool. And it's absolutely essential. So don't shortchange yourself on sleep, because it is for your well-being.